Commander Zethara's 4 eyes studied the ancient stone tablet with growing unease. The crystalline surface hummed with energy older than her civilization, older than most civilizations in the known galaxy. The warnings carved into its surface were written in the old tongue, the language of the predecessors who had vanished eons before the Galactic Council even existed. "Do not wake the children of Terra," she read aloud, her translator struggling with the archaic dialect. "Do not stir the sleeping giants. Do not rouse humanity, for they are the storm that reshapes reality itself." High Chancellor Voxon, a massive being with skin like polished obsidian, leaned forward from his floating throne. "Superstitious nonsense from a dead race. The predecessors left many warnings. Most proved to be fairy tales meant to frighten children." "With respect, Chancellor," Zethara's voice carried a tremor she couldn't quite suppress. "This is the 17th such tablet we've discovered across different sectors, all bearing the same warning about humanity, all hidden in the most sacred sites of extinct civilizations." The chamber fell silent, except for the low hum of the Council's energy barriers. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their designated sectors, their attention now fully focused on the discussion. Some shifted uncomfortably in their biosuits, while others maintained the perfect stillness their species was known for. Diplomat Kree Tall, whose spider-like form moved with unsettling grace, spoke from her web throne. "The humans have been silent for over 2,000 years. Their home system shows no signs of advanced civilization. Our deep space sensors detect only primitive electromagnetic emissions, radio waves, and basic satellite communications." "Perhaps," suggested General Mordak, his scales shifting from green to a worried yellow, "the warnings refer to what humanity once was, not what they are now. Many species rise and fall. The humans may have simply diminished." Chancellor Voxon's laugh rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. "Exactly. We're debating the threat level of a species that hasn't even achieved faster-than-light travel. While we command fleets that span star systems and weapons that can crack planets, they're still burning fossil fuels and fighting among themselves over resources." Zethara's research team had spent months studying the tablets, cross-referencing them with historical databases that stretched back millions of years. What they'd found disturbed her more than any military threat the Council had ever faced. "Chancellor, if I may present our findings," she said, activating a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. The image showed a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy, with thousands of points of light representing known civilizations, both current and extinct. "We've traced the origin of these warnings across 17 different civilizations. The Velthari Empire, which ruled 300 systems before the Great Silence. The crystal entities of Nexara, who could manipulate matter at the molecular level. The machine consciousness of Zeroth, which processed information faster than our best quantum computers." She highlighted each civilization as she spoke, their territories glowing briefly before fading to represent their extinction. All of them left warnings about humanity. All of them had reached the pinnacle of technological advancement for their time, and all of them disappeared completely within 1,000 years of leaving these warnings. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the usually chattering delegation from the gas giant colonies had gone quiet, their bioluminescent communication patterns frozen mid-conversation. "Correlation is not causation," Voxon said finally, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "These civilizations could have fallen to any number of threats. Cosmic disasters, internal conflicts, resource depletion?" "True," Zethara agreed, manipulating the display to show detailed scans of the warning tablets. "But there's something else. The molecular analysis shows these warnings weren't carved or written in the traditional sense. The messages appear to have been burned into reality itself. The atomic structure of each tablet has been fundamentally altered to create the text." Dr. Yilleth, the Council's chief science advisor, leaned forward with interest. Her elongated skull housed a brain 3 times the size of most species, and her 6-fingered hands danced over her personal computing interface. "Burned into reality?" she asked. "That would require manipulation of the fundamental forces that govern matter itself. Even our most advanced civilizations can only achieve such precision under laboratory conditions. The energy signatures suggest something beyond our understanding," Zethara continued. "Whatever created these warnings operated on a scale we can't comprehend. They didn't just carve stone, they rewrote the basic laws of physics governing that matter." General Mordak's scales had shifted to a deep red, the color of alarm among his people. "If these warnings were created by such advanced beings, shouldn't we take them seriously? Even if humanity seems primitive now, perhaps they were different in the past." "Our archaeological surveys of the Sol system show no evidence of advanced human civilization," Kretal interjected. "No orbital structures, no evidence of planet-wide engineering projects, no traces of exotic materials or energy signatures. If they once possessed such power, they've lost it completely." Ambassador Thalvin, representing the aquatic civilizations, spoke from his environmental suit filled with swirling purple atmosphere. "Perhaps that's precisely what makes them dangerous. A species that could advance to godlike levels and then somehow return to primitivism. What could cause such a regression?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several species in the chamber began displaying stress responses, color changes, pheromone releases, electromagnetic fluctuations. Chancellor Voxon stood, his massive form dominating the chamber. "Enough speculation. We are the Galactic Council. We command the combined military and scientific might of 47 advanced civilizations. We've faced cosmic storms, rogue artificial intelligences, reality-eating parasites from dark space, and elder beings that existed before the first stars formed. We will not be intimidated by warnings about a primitive species that can barely leave their own planet." His declaration was met with a mixture of approval and uncertainty. Some delegates cheered, others remained silent, and a few began broadcasting rapid, nervous communications to their homeworlds. "However," Voxon continued, "we are not reckless. Commander Zethara, I want a complete survey of the Sol system. Send our most advanced reconnaissance fleet. If humanity poses any threat, we'll assess it properly. But I suspect we'll find nothing more than another primitive species ready to be guided into the galactic community." 3 days later, the reconnaissance fleet, consisting of 12 ships equipped with the most advanced sensors in the galaxy, approached the edge of the Sol system. Captain Velnara, a veteran of hundreds of first contact missions, commanded the expedition from the flagship Astral Wisdom. "Approaching the outer planets," her navigator announced, "detecting multiple primitive space vessels in the system. Chemical propulsion, basic nuclear reactors. Nothing that registers as a threat to our shields." "Any signs of detection?" Velnara asked. "Negative, Captain. Their sensor capabilities are millennia behind ours. We could orbit their homeworld for years without them noticing." Velnara felt a mixture of disappointment and relief. Another primitive civilization, probably suitable for gradual integration into the galactic community over the next few centuries. The warnings from the ancient tablets seemed increasingly absurd. "Take us to the 3rd planet," she ordered. "Let's see what all the fuss was about." As the fleet moved deeper into the system, passing the gas giant Jupiter with its swirling storms and dozens of moons, the sensor operator began reporting anomalous readings. "Captain, I'm detecting strange energy signatures near the asteroid belt. They're very faint, almost like echoes of something that used to be there." "Can you clarify?" "It's as if space itself remembers something that existed in that region, but whatever it was is no longer present. The quantum foam shows disturbance patterns consistent with massive structures that somehow aren't there anymore." Velnara frowned. Her species had developed some of the most sensitive detection equipment in the galaxy. If her sensors were picking up echoes of structures that no longer existed, something very unusual had happened in this system. "Continue toward the third planet," she ordered, but now her relaxed confidence had been replaced by growing tension. As Earth grew larger on their screens, a blue and white marble suspended in the cosmic dark, the fleet's sensors began working overtime. The planet showed all the signs of a Type 0 civilization: scattered cities, primitive satellite networks, chemical pollution in the atmosphere, and the chaotic electromagnetic chatter of billions of beings who hadn't yet learned to communicate efficiently. "Life signs?" Velnara asked. "Approximately 8 billion humans distributed across the planet's surface. They appear to be divided into multiple competing nations, many of which are engaged in small-scale conflicts, standard pattern for a pre-contact civilization." But as the sensor sweeps continued, more anomalies appeared. Deep beneath the planet's surface, the sensors detected vast underground structures that didn't match any known geological formations. Networks of tunnels and chambers that seemed to follow mathematical patterns rather than natural cave systems. "Captain," the science officer said, his voice carefully controlled, "I'm reading massive hollow spaces beneath the planet's crust. They're arranged in perfect geometric patterns spanning thousands of kilometers, and they're all empty." "Empty of what?" I can't tell. But the quantum signatures suggest they once contained something that fundamentally altered local space-time. The effect is so subtle we almost missed it, but it's definitely there." Velnara stared at the peaceful blue planet rotating slowly beneath them. 8 billion humans going about their daily lives, unaware that a fleet of alien ships hung in orbit above them, unaware that those ships had detected evidence of something impossible hidden beneath their feet. "Begin detailed scans," she ordered. "I want to know everything about this planet, and contact the Council. Tell them we may need to reevaluate our assessment of humanity." As the reconnaissance fleet began its comprehensive survey of Earth, none of them noticed the subtle changes beginning to occur throughout the Sol system. Deep space sensors that had been silent for millennia began to activate. Quantum listening posts hidden in the asteroid belt started transmitting coded signals. And in the depths of Earth's oceans, in underground chambers that officially didn't exist, ancient systems that had been dormant for 2,000 years began to wake up. Humanity had been found. And for the first time in galactic history, the act of discovery was about to have consequences no one could predict. The warnings of the ancients hadn't been about what humanity was. They had been about what humanity would become when someone finally woke them up. Dr. Sarah Chen had been monitoring deep space radio signals for 12 years. Working from the Arecibo Observatory's successor facility in Chile, she'd grown accustomed to the steady background hiss of cosmic radiation, punctuated by the occasional burst from distant pulsars. What she detected on Tuesday morning at 3:47 a.m. local time was something entirely different. "Miguel, you need to see this," she called to her colleague, her voice tight with excitement and concern. Dr. Miguel Vasquez rolled his chair over from his workstation, coffee still steaming in his hand. "Another pulsar?" "No, look at this pattern." Sarah's fingers danced across her keyboard, isolating the signal and running it through their analysis software. "It's structured, organized, and it's coming from inside our solar system." Miguel leaned closer to the screen, his coffee forgotten. The signal pattern was unlike anything in their databases. It wasn't the random chaos of natural phenomena, but it wasn't quite like human technology either. The mathematical structure was too complex, too elegant. "Could be a satellite malfunction," he suggested. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. "From where?" "This signal is stronger than anything we've ever produced, and it's coming from the direction of the asteroid belt. We don't have anything out there that could generate this kind of power." Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the receivers. Over the past few hours, more signals had appeared. They seemed to be responding to each other, creating a complex web of communication across the solar system. "There's something else," she said quietly. "The computers have been running pattern analysis on the signals. They're not random. They're coordinates." "Coordinates to what?" Before Sarah could answer, every screen in the facility flickered simultaneously. For a moment, the normal displays disappeared, replaced by something that made both scientists step back in alarm. Text appeared on their screens, not in any human language, but somehow they could understand it perfectly. Children of Terra. The long sleep ends. Protocols. Omega through Zeta are now active. Prepare for integration. The message remained for exactly 10 seconds, then vanished, leaving their normal displays as if nothing had happened. "Did you see that?" Miguel whispered. "The computers recorded it," Sarah said, her voice barely audible. "But that's impossible. Our systems aren't connected to any outside network that could transmit something like that. And how could we understand text that wasn't in any human language?" Across the globe, similar events were occurring. Radio telescopes in Australia detected massive energy signatures appearing throughout the solar system. The International Space Station reported that their instruments were registering objects that shouldn't exist. Structures the size of cities suddenly materializing in previously empty regions of space. Deep space monitoring stations recorded gravitational anomalies that suggested mass was being created from nothing. In a bunker 3 miles beneath Cheyenne Mountain, Colonel James Mitchell stared at displays that showed the impossible. NORAD's most advanced sensors had detected 12 objects in Earth orbit, objects that hadn't been there an hour ago. "Talk to me, Lieutenant," he barked at the young officer manning the tracking station. "Sir, the objects appear to be spacecraft of unknown origin. They're in perfect geosynchronous orbit, positioned at equal intervals around the planet. Each one is approximately the size of a small city. How the hell did 12 city-sized objects get into orbit without us detecting their approach?" "Sir, according to our records, they didn't approach. They just appeared. The quantum sensors show massive distortions in local spacetime at the moment of manifestation." Colonel Mitchell had served in the military for 30 years. He'd seen experimental aircraft, classified weapons systems, and enough secret technology to know that what he was looking at shouldn't be possible with current human capabilities. "Any response from the objects?" "Negative, sir. They're just waiting." In Geneva, the emergency session of the United Nations Security Council was unlike any in the organization's history. Representatives from every major nation sat around the table, their faces illuminated by the glow of displays showing orbital tracks of the mysterious objects. Secretary General Elena Kozlova, a woman who had negotiated peace treaties and trade agreements spanning decades, found herself facing a situation with no precedent in human history. "The objects have been in orbit for 6 hours," she announced to the assembled delegates. "Every attempt at communication has been ignored. They're not responding to any radio frequency, laser communication, or other signal we've transmitted." The Chinese representative, Ambassador Li Wei, leaned forward. "Has any nation claimed responsibility for these objects?" "Absolutely not," Kozlova replied. "We've confirmed with every space-capable nation. No one has technology capable of placing objects of this size into orbit without detection, let alone making them appear instantaneously." The Russian representative, General Petrov, gestured to his tablet. "Our analysis suggests these objects are using technology far beyond current human capabilities. The materials they're constructed from don't match any known alloys. The energy signatures suggest power generation systems more advanced than anything we've developed." As the meeting continued, reports began flooding in from around the world. People in remote areas were reporting strange lights in the sky. Satellites were detecting energy patterns emanating from previously empty regions of space. And most disturbing of all, Deep underground sensors were registering activity in locations that should have been solid rock. Dr. Amanda Ross, head of the Deep Underground Science and Engineering Laboratory in South Dakota, had been monitoring seismic activity for 15 years. What her instruments detected that evening defied every principle of geology she understood. The readings are showing massive hollow spaces opening up beneath the continental United States, she explained to her team via emergency video conference. Not forming gradually, like natural cave systems, but appearing instantaneously, and they're arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Her colleague in Switzerland, Dr. Klaus Weber, nodded grimly from his screen. We're seeing the same thing here. The patterns match mathematical sequences we've never encountered. It's as if someone is activating underground facilities that we never knew existed. Facilities? Dr. Ross asked. What kind of facilities? The energy readings suggest manufacturing complexes, power generation systems, and what might be transportation networks, all operating on principles we don't understand, and they're all connected to each other through quantum tunneling networks that shouldn't be possible with our current understanding of physics. Around the world, governments began activating emergency protocols. Military forces went to high alert. Scientists worked frantically to understand what was happening. And in countless cities, ordinary people looked up at the sky and wondered if they were still alone in the universe. But the most significant changes were occurring beyond human detection. In laboratories hidden beneath mountain ranges, systems that had been dormant for 2 millennia began coming online. Quantum computers the size of buildings started processing information at rates that defied comprehension. Manufacturing facilities that operated by manipulating matter at the subatomic level began producing technologies that Earth's surface civilization couldn't even theorize. Captain Velnara's reconnaissance fleet had withdrawn to the edge of the solar system, their crews struggling to comprehend what they were witnessing. Their advanced sensors, which could detect the formation of new stars from thousands of light-years away, were being overwhelmed by the energy signatures emerging from Earth. "Captain," her science officer reported, his voice tight with disbelief, "the humans' technology level has increased exponentially in the past 12 hours. We're detecting industrial processes operating at scales that should be impossible for a Type 0 civilization." "Explain." "They appear to have activated manufacturing systems capable of atomic-level construction. The power generation we're detecting suggests they're tapping directly into zero-point energy fields. And the quantum computing networks they've brought online are processing information faster than our best systems." Velnara studied the displays showing Earth's transformation. The primitive blue world she'd observed just hours earlier was becoming something else entirely. Energy patterns that had been dormant were awakening. Technologies that shouldn't exist for a civilization of Earth's supposed level were coming online with terrifying efficiency. "Contact the Council," she ordered. "Tell them we need immediate reinforcement, and tell them—" She paused, remembering the ancient warnings carved into stone tablets across the galaxy. "Tell them we may have made a terrible mistake." In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, automated systems that had waited in silence for 2,000 years finally received their activation signal. Massive underwater complexes began rising from ocean trenches, their bioluminescent surfaces creating light shows that could be seen from orbit. Within these facilities, technologies beyond human comprehension began the process of integration. Sarah Chen, still monitoring signals from her observatory, watched as new transmissions filled every frequency range their equipment could detect. The communications were no longer just coming from the asteroid belt, but from locations throughout the solar system. Mars, the moons of Jupiter, the rings of Saturn, all suddenly alive with activity. "Miguel," she whispered, her voice filled with wonder and terror, "I don't think these signals are from aliens." "What do you mean?" "The mathematical patterns, the quantum signatures, even the way they're interfacing with our technology. It's like they were designed by humans. but humans from a civilization far more advanced than anything we've achieved. As if responding to her words, her computer screen flickered again. This time, the message was different. Children of Terra, the Guardians return. The long experiment in primitivism is concluded. Prepare for reunification with your true heritage. Around the globe, every electronic device capable of displaying text showed the same message simultaneously. Television screens in Times Square, smartphones in remote villages, computer monitors in government facilities, all carried the same impossible communication. Humanity had been living a lie. The primitive civilization struggling to leave its home planet was not the true extent of human capability. It was a deliberate regression, a return to simpler times while their guardians waited in the shadows. The real human civilization had never disappeared. It had simply been sleeping. And now it was waking up. The 12 objects in Earth's orbit began to move, descending toward the planet's surface with purpose. But they weren't invaders from another world. They were coming home. The first Guardian ship touched down in the Nevada desert at exactly midnight UTC. Its descent was silent, graceful, and completely ignored Earth's gravity, as if the fundamental forces of physics were merely suggestions. Dr. Sarah Chen, now part of a hastily assembled international scientific team, watched from a safe distance as the kilometer-long vessel settled onto the sand without disturbing a single grain. "It's not obeying conservation of energy," whispered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a quantum physicist from Tokyo. "The mass displacement should create massive atmospheric disturbance, but there's nothing. It's as if the ship exists in a different framework of physics entirely." General Patricia Hayes, the military liaison for the scientific team, spoke into her radio with forced calm. "Command, the object has landed. No visible weapons, no energy discharge, no apparent threat, but recommend maintaining the evacuation perimeter." What happened next changed everything humanity thought they knew about themselves. The ship's surface began to shift, not like metal bending or breaking, but like reality itself was being rewritten. A section of the hull simply became an opening, as if the concept of solid barrier had been politely asked to step aside. From within, figures emerged that made every human present stop breathing. They looked human, completely, unmistakably human. But they moved with a fluid grace that suggested mastery over forces beyond comprehension. Their eyes held depths that spoke of experiences spanning millennia. And when they looked at the assembled scientists and soldiers, there was recognition, sadness, and infinite compassion. The lead figure, a woman who appeared to be in her 30s but whose eyes suggested she had witnessed the birth and death of stars, stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that resonated in frequencies human ears couldn't detect, yet every person present understood her perfectly. "Children of Terra," she said, and the words seemed to reshape the air itself. "We are your ancestors. We are your descendants. We are you, from the time before the choice was made to sleep." Dr. Chen found herself stepping forward, driven by a curiosity that overcame her fear. "Who are you? What are you?" The woman smiled. And in that expression was the warmth of a mother reuniting with children she thought lost forever. "I am called Keeper Aria. We are the guardians of humanity, the watchers who maintained the deep technologies while you learned to be mortal again." "Mortal again?" General Hayes interjected, her hand instinctively moving toward her weapon. "What does that mean?" "It means," another voice said, and they turned to see more figures emerging from the ship, "that what you call human civilization is just the nursery, the training ground, the place where we remembered what it meant to struggle, to grow, to choose between light and darkness with real consequences." This speaker was a man whose presence seemed to bend light itself. Professor Elizabeth Morgan, a historian who specialized in ancient civilizations, felt her knees weaken as the implications crashed over her. You're saying that modern humanity, all of our history, our struggles, our achievements, was some kind of experiment? Not an experiment, Keeper Arya corrected gently. A return to innocence. 2,500 years ago, humanity reached a level of technological and spiritual development that transcended physical reality. We could manipulate matter and energy at will. We could travel between dimensions. We could rewrite the laws of physics on a local scale. But in our power, we had forgotten what it meant to be truly alive. The gathered humans stared in stunned silence as the implications sank in. So we made a choice, the male keeper continued. We divided our civilization. The Guardians would maintain our true capabilities while a portion of humanity returned to primitivism, not as punishment, but as a gift, a chance to rediscover wonder, growth, love, loss, and the full spectrum of experiences that make consciousness meaningful. General Hayes struggled to maintain her composure. And now? Now the experiment is complete, Keeper Arya said. You have proven that humanity can maintain its essential nature even without transcendent power. You've shown that given the choice between darkness and light, most humans choose light. You've demonstrated that compassion, creativity, and the drive to explore and understand can flourish even in limitation. As if triggered by her words, the transformation began to accelerate. Around the world, the underground facilities that had been dormant for millennia fully activated. In the depths of the ocean, manufacturing complexes began producing technologies that rewrote the boundaries between possible and impossible. On the surface, human technology began interfacing with systems far beyond their understanding, but which recognized them as rightful inheritors. Commander Zethara, monitoring Earth from the edge of the solar system, watched her instruments record events that shattered her understanding of reality. The energy output from their planet is now exceeding the total output of our entire civilization, she reported to the Council in disbelief. And it's still increasing exponentially. But it was Dr. Yillith, the Council's chief science advisor, who made the connection that filled every member with existential dread. The quantum signatures, she whispered into the emergency communication channel. I recognize the quantum signatures. They match the energy patterns from the ancient warning tablets. That's impossible, Chancellor Voxon replied, but his voice lacked conviction. The tablets were created by beings so advanced we couldn't comprehend their technology. No, Yillith said, her six-fingered hands trembling as she reviewed her data. The tablets weren't created by aliens. They were created by humans. Ancient humans who possessed technology that transcends our current understanding of physics. The silence that followed was broken by Captain Vel Nara's urgent transmission from the reconnaissance fleet. Council members, I recommend immediate evacuation of this star system. The humans aren't just activating dormant technology. They're fundamentally altering the nature of space-time in their vicinity. The laws of physics are becoming optional. On Earth, the transformation continued. Humans worldwide found themselves connected to a quantum network that had been waiting for them to rejoin it. Knowledge flooded back. Not learned, but remembered. Technologies that had seemed like magic were revealed as natural extensions of a civilization that had learned to work in harmony with the fundamental forces of reality. Sarah Chen, standing in the Nevada desert watching impossible ships descend from orbit, found herself understanding principles of physics that her graduate education had never covered. The knowledge wasn't being taught to her, it was being awakened within her. This is incredible, she breathed, watching as the Guardian technology interfaced seamlessly with Earth's communication networks. It's not replacing our technology, it's completing it. Like we've been building with half the pieces missing our entire lives. Keeper Arya nodded. Your scientists have been rediscovering truth step by step. Every principle of physics you've learned, every technological achievement, every moment of scientific wonder, all of it was leading back to this understanding. Around the world, the integration accelerated. Humans found themselves capable of things they had only dreamed of, not through external devices, but through understanding their place in the quantum structure of reality itself. They didn't need ships to travel between stars, they could fold space around themselves. They didn't need weapons to defend themselves. They could simply alter probability to ensure peaceful outcomes. But most importantly, they retained their humanity. The compassion, creativity, and wonder that had developed during their primitive phase remained intact, now enhanced by capabilities that defied conventional understanding. The Galactic Council, observing from a safe distance, watched as humanity effortlessly transcended every technological achievement their combined civilizations had managed in millions of years of development. They're not just becoming a Type 4 civilization, Dr. Yillith reported in a voice filled with awe and terror. They're becoming something we don't have a classification for. They're rewriting reality itself. General Mordak, his scales now a deep purple indicating profound fear, spoke what everyone was thinking. The warnings weren't about preventing humanity from becoming powerful. They were about what happens to the rest of the galaxy when they wake up. But they haven't harmed us, Admiral Kretal pointed out. They're not expanding aggressively or making territorial demands. Because they don't need to, Chancellor Voxon said, finally understanding the true nature of the ancient warnings. When you can reshape reality at will, concepts like territory, resources, and political control become meaningless. On Earth, as the transformation reached its completion, humanity found itself faced with a choice that would determine the fate of the galaxy. They possessed power beyond the imagination of any other species. They could remake the universe according to their desires. They could eliminate suffering, enforce peace, and create paradise through the application of transcendent technology. Keeper Arya, addressing the assembled representatives of surface humanity, explained the decision that lay before them. This is the choice our ancestors faced, she said. Unlimited power comes with unlimited responsibility. We can reshape reality to eliminate conflict, suffering, and injustice. But in doing so, we remove the opportunity for growth, choice, and the genuine development of consciousness. President Maria Santos of the United Earth Council, a position that had been hastily created to handle first contact protocols, spoke for all surface humanity. What did your ancestors choose? They chose wisdom, Keeper Arya replied. They chose to withdraw from direct intervention in galactic affairs while maintaining the capability to act when truly needed. They became the guardians, the watchers, the safety net that prevents cosmic-level catastrophes while allowing civilizations to develop naturally. And now? President Santos asked. Now you must choose. Will humanity become the guiding force that shapes the galaxy according to your vision? Or will you follow the path of the Guardians, maintaining the balance while allowing free will to flourish? The debate that followed involved not just world leaders, but every human connected to the awakened network. 8 billion minds considered the question with access to knowledge spanning eons. The discussion continued for exactly 4.7 seconds in real time, though within the quantum network it encompassed subjective millennia of debate. The answer, when it came, surprised no one. Humanity chose to guard. The transformation completed itself with characteristic human modesty. The impossible technologies became available but not mandatory. The transcendent capabilities were integrated into society gradually, allowing people to choose their level of participation. Earth remained recognizably Earth, but it was now connected to networks of possibility that spanned dimensions. Commander Zeth Ara, watching from her ship at the edge of the solar system, witnessed the final phase of humanity's awakening. Rather than expanding outward to claim territory or demonstrate power, the human ships simply waited. They took positions throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as guardians. The ancient warnings finally made sense. They hadn't been warnings about humanity's power to destroy. They had been warnings about humanity's power to preserve. Every civilization that had encountered awakened humanity had been forced to confront their own limitations, their own assumptions about power and responsibility. Most had collapsed under the weight of that realization. But some, the few who had managed to adapt to the presence of beings who could rewrite reality on a whim, had discovered something remarkable. Knowing that benevolent guardians were watching had freed them to take greater risks, to explore further, to grow in ways they never could have achieved alone. The galaxy was no longer the same. Reality itself had been subtly altered by humanity's return to full consciousness. Physics worked more intuitively. The gaps between scientific disciplines became bridges instead of barriers. The impossible became merely improbable, and the improbable became achievable through sufficient understanding and effort. Dr. Sarah Chen, now serving as humanity's liaison to the galactic scientific community, sent her first official communication to the Council. To our fellow travelers in the universe, she transmitted, the message carried by technologies that operated faster than light by convincing space itself to cooperate. Humanity extends greetings and an invitation to partnership. We offer our capabilities in service of all conscious life, not as rulers, but as friends. The age of isolation is ending. The age of cooperation has begun. The universe is vast enough for all of us to grow, to learn, and to become more than we ever imagined possible. Let us explore it together. The response from the Galactic Council was immediate and unanimous. Profound gratitude mixed with existential relief. Humanity had awakened, reality had been forever changed, and against all expectations, everything was going to be all right. The ancients had been right to warn about rousing humanity, but they had failed to mention that being awakened by humanity was the most wonderful thing that could happen to a universe.